Hey, everybody. Welcome to In Broad Daylight, a solo podcast hosted by me. I'm Adam Todd Brown. Last week, I talked about a bunch of news stories from across the country that aren't getting enough national attention. But did you know there are countries other than the United States and that news happens in those places too? It's true. It's called international news. And that's what we're talking about today, bruv. If you're unfamiliar, that's a British word that means bruv. I added that bit of bilingual flair because the story I'm covering today happened or is happening in the UK, the America of Europe. Have you heard? Right wingers were absolutely tearing shit up in England and Northern Ireland both last week. The cause? Racist misinformation and rich white people on the internet. Well, that and a very, very long history of anti immigrant sentiment in England that dates back pretty much as far as you want it to, honestly, at least 100 years or so. World War I, World War II, 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Sure, you name it. Go back to a point in history. England probably hated immigrants at that time. That said, this most recent wave of xenophobia boils down in large part to the Tories, aka the conservatives, ruling the country for the past 14 years. During that time, anti immigrant rhetoric became all the rage. For example, in 2013, then Prime Minister Theresa May launched a campaign called Go Home that was literally just vans with the words go home or face arrest plastered on them, driving around diverse neighborhoods. That conservative reign just ended a few weeks ago when the centrist Labour Party leader Keir Starmer was elected prime minister. So the xenophobes were already on edge, and that was before the Southport stabbings. If you're unfamiliar, lucky you. On July 29th, a 17-year-old man armed with a knife entered a community dance studio where a Taylor Swift themed yoga and bracelet class was happening and killed 3 children and injured another 10 people, 8 of whom were also children. An unspeakable tragedy, obviously. To add to the tragedy, before police had a chance to name the perpetrator, social media took a shot at naming him first, and they blew it. Specifically, a 55-year-old woman named Bonnie Spofforth, mother of 3 and managing director of a clothing company, tweeted from the comfort of her $1.5 million Cheshire farmhouse, according to one UK outlet, that a Muslim asylum seeker who was on an MI6 watch list named Ali al Shakati was responsible for the crime. She posted the claim at 4:49 p.m. the day of the attack. The exact quote, Ali al Shakati was the suspect. He was an asylum seeker who came to the UK by boat last year and was on an MI6 watch list. If this is true, then all hell is about to break loose. End quote. The next day, at a vigil for the victims of the stabbing attack, all hell did indeed break loose, with a local mosque being the target of most of the aggression. A lot of that had to do with Russian news outlet RT and sex trafficking influencer Andrew Tate, both amplifying Spofforth's tweet to millions and millions of followers. On account of all that, the post racked up an estimated 27 million impressions in just 24 hours. The ensuing riots over it spread to a lot more parts of the UK after that, almost certainly fueled by far right Telegram channels circulating target lists of immigration lawyers and advocates the angry hordes might consider going after. And of course, Elon Musk even entered the fray to helpfully add that civil war was inevitable in the UK, replying to a user who said the riots were the result of immigration and open borders. The problem is Bonnie Spofforth was wrong. It seems like Ali al Shakati is most likely not even a real person. The actual perpetrator was 17-year-old Axel Radubakana, who was born in Cardiff, which literally everyone watching or listening to this knows is the capital of and largest city in Wales. So, not an immigrant. Also, his parents are from Rwanda, a predominantly Christian nation. And yes, his parents are Christian. Not that any of that mattered. Everything Bonnie Spofforth implied about the person who committed this crime was incorrect, from the name to the religion. But because her tweet spread as fast and as far as it did, violence ensued. The resulting riots led to more than 700 arrests, with police promising more arrests to come. And this wasn't just protests that turned into property damage, which is a thing right wingers love to clutch their pearls over. No, this was a black man beaten by an angry mob. This was an Asian man stabbed at a train station, hotels housing asylum seekers being set on fire. And again, this was in large part due to one bit of misinformation posted online by a woman who was just looking to score some internet cool points. So I think it's more than fine that Bonnie was arrested for that tweet. In interviews with various UK outlets, she's talked about how that tweet has ruined her life. Example, she told Mail Online, quote, "I'm mortified that I'm being accused of this. I did not make it up. I first received this information from somebody in Southport. My post had nothing to do with the violence we've seen across the country, but I acknowledge that it may have been the source for the information used by a Russian news website." End quote. And Bonnie, I think that means your post had something to do with the violence. Fact. Back when COVID first kicked off and things were still being shut down, but not completely yet, a person I trust texted me and said their friend in Homeland Security told them the entire nation was about to be locked down in less than an hour and that I should get from my office to my home as quickly as possible. There was no harm in heading home, so I did that. But I was also a little skeptical, and sure enough, no such lockdown occurred. And me and that friend have never talked about that text again. Now, imagine if instead of responding by just going home, I also tweeted it to my moderately sized Twitter following, and that got retweeted by someone with way more followers than me, and it spread. And next thing you know, there's chaos and panic and gridlock in the streets nationwide. I'd feel a little responsible for causing that, even if I was just a middleman in that exchange of misinformation. Bonnie deserved to be arrested, is what I'm getting at. Here's another quote. "It was a spur of the moment, ridiculous thing to do, which has literally destroyed me. It was just a mistake. I did a really stupid thing, and I copied and pasted it from what I saw, and I added the line, 'if this is true,'" end quote. What a weird moment to use the phrase literally destroyed. Because speaking of that, lots of things were literally destroyed in the riots that followed Bonnie's tweet. Like in Liverpool, home of the Beatles, where a library and a food bank were both burned down. There was also plenty of looting, which seems to go down way smoother with right wingers when they're the ones doing it. Go figure. Also, a supermarket in Belfast was burned to ashes by rioters targeting immigrant owned businesses. But yeah, tell us more about how your shit got destroyed, Bonnie. As you'd expect, the arrest of Bonnie Spofforth has raised a lot of free speech questions for people. One of them being, hey, should we maybe arrest Elon Musk too? That's an idea that was floated by Bruce Daisley, who from 2012 to 2020 served as Twitter's vice president for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. As someone who would probably know, Daisley points out in an opinion piece published by The Guardian that Silicon Valley tech bros' obsession with free speech is mostly just a cost saving measure. Hiring staff to monitor content costs money, and they don't want to spend that money. With Elon Musk already bleeding money on account of how advertisers are leaving his platform in droves, The chances of him putting a team in place to monitor misinformation and things of the like are slim to none, especially when you factor in that he wants to be one of the people spreading that misinformation. So, Daisley's suggestion is strengthening a recently passed British law called the Online Safety Act of 2023 in a way that could result in someone in Musk's position facing actual criminal charges for inciting unrest in other countries by way of social media posts. That Online Safety Act he mentions should, in theory, accomplish that when it finally takes full effect. That hasn't happened yet, despite all of that misleading 2023 stuff in the title. The act places a duty of care for end users on social media platforms and empowers the Office of Communications, Ofcom, to investigate and potentially punish platforms that fail in stopping the spread of misinformation that could harm a person or the public safety. Bruce Daisley calling for the possibility of issuing a warrant for Musk's arrest would probably require bolstering that act quite a bit. It doesn't seem like it allows for arrests right now. Also, as explained by Bloomberg columnist Parmi Olson, on the way out the door, the previous conservative administration in Britain managed to get a section of the act removed that banned, quote, legal but harmful, end quote, content, meaning only content that was already illegal under British law would be covered. So calling for violence on Telegram, still illegal. Tweeting that civil war is inevitable, like Elon Musk did in response to the fake news that the Southport stabbing suspect was Muslim, not illegal. But I don't know. There's got to be something someone can arrest him for somewhere, right? There's got to be. Keep working on it, world. We can do this. Hey, let's switch gears and talk about the Olympics, a far less depressing event, provided you're not a poor person living near where a stadium needs to be built. Much like those riots we just talked about, the Olympics also mostly wrapped up over the weekend, as long as you didn't win a bronze medal in the women's gymnastics floor routine. One of the absolute best stories of the 2024 Summer Games was that of Filipino gymnast Carlos Yulo. He won gold in the artistic floor exercise and the vault, becoming the first Filipino man to win a gold medal. Female weightlifter Heidelin Diaz won gold in 2020. Yulo is the first athlete from the Philippines to win 2 gold medals, though, and he did it at the same Olympics. That part is cool, but the really fun part of the story is what Yulo got for winning those gold medals. Turns out that's a thing that varies by country. Here in the United States, athletes get $37,500 for winning a gold medal. On the one hand, that is kind of low. When 2 Indonesian athletes won gold in badminton at the Tokyo Games in 2021, the country gave them 5 cows, a meatball restaurant, and a new house. Not a joke. Oh, also $350,000. Singapore is even more generous. Their gold medal athletes get $744,000. In this country's defense, though, we have way more gold medalists to pay. So it's fine. My favorite Olympic perk is that athletes from Kazakhstan get an apartment for winning a medal, and the size of the apartment corresponds to what medal you won. Gold, 3-room apartment. Silver, 2-room apartment. Bronze, 1-room apartment. At least that was my favorite perk until I heard about all the swag Carlos Yulo is taking home for winning double gold in Paris. For starters, he'll get around 16 million pesos, which translates to less US dollars than it sounds like it would. But it's not nothing. But it's private companies that really came through. Of course, he got a house, but another private company also gave him a fully furnished 3-bedroom condo in the Manila metropolitan area. Various chain restaurants offered him everything from free lifetime buffets to lifetime mac and cheese, exactly the kind of food I expect svelte Olympic athletes who can jump 25 feet in the air if the floor is just a little bouncy to throw down on in between events. I'm going to be honest, this seems like a thing where any business that had something to offer just jumped in to have their name included in this news. And hey, good job, Filipino doctor who offered Carlos Yulo free colonoscopies when he turns 45. You win. There's your mention. Same for the car lighting company that offered him a free set of headlights and fog lights for his car. Is that just a one time offer? Because I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news, but that feels a little lowball to me. Does that offer include the car to attach them to? If not, how about you come back to the table with a little more respect for an Olympic champion? And I know this all sounds like good news, but here's the problem with all of this: nothing. Every country should be this generous to their Olympic athletes. I hope this is a trend that catches on. In the meantime, I'm content knowing LeBron James and Steph Curry left Paris with some much needed walking around money. I'm not at all joking when I say it would be rad if they donated that to the women's national team. Last story. You know that thing where a lot of people in this country are weirdly obsessed with serial killers and other assorted criminals? Apparently, that happens everywhere. Case in point, despite Shakira being available as a replacement icon for decades now, people in Colombia are still obsessed with notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar. And by people, I think I just mean tourists. Lawmakers in Colombia are debating a bill that would ban the sale of Pablo Escobar souvenirs and merch in the country. The bill proposes fines for people who sell it and people who display it, i.e., wearing a t shirt, for example. The thinking is that sales of these items re victimize the victims of murderers and should thus be halted. It seems like the primary market for this is tourists buying from street vendors. A vendor interviewed by The Guardian said, quote, "It's not a trend that I came up with. The Mexicans, the Costa Ricans, the Americans are always asking me for Escobar." End quote. Americans, huh? That's a curveball. I honestly have no clue why American tourists would be so connected to a drug lord who died in 1993. Maybe I should check out the 2015 hit Netflix series Narcos and see what all the fuss is about. Anyway, this bill has to go through 4 debates before it can be passed. And after that, there will be a transitional period where the government works with vendors to help them make the change to hiding all of their Escobar merch under the counter and only showing it to tourists who got the password from the concierge at their hotel. What I'm getting at should be clear. One of you needs to make your way to Colombia and get me an Escobar coffee mug before it's a crime. Just joking. You can buy those on Amazon, as it turns out. And hey, that is our episode. If you're so inclined, maybe go listen to the audio podcast version of this show, where you'll get even more international news about the rideable suitcase wars in Japan, a Swedish immigration proposal that will turn up to 1 million workers into snitches overnight, and so much more. It's available wherever podcasts are at, or at least it should be. Let me know if it's not, I guess. And hey, thanks. I love you. Go do something fun with the rest of your day.